That started. Find my Bible. Oh, I'm in Genesis. I was getting ready for the next one. Next book, chapter 15, Song of Moses. Here we go. All right. So you ready? All right, you guys all ready online? Let me straighten it up just a little bit. Boy, our lighting's horrible. We don't have anybody doing this stuff. All right. Oh. Excuse me. All right. If everybody's ready, Father, we ask that this reach people with open mind, open eyes and open ears. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, it's Wednesday night. We're on our line-by-line, verse-by-verse study of the book of Exodus, and we have made it every single word so far through to chapter 15. All right, and here we're coming with this. We just got out of, last week we got out of Egypt, finally. Finally crossed the Red Sea, and that kind of actually went kind of hand in toe with our special study that week, because we had parting in the water there, and the same with Elijah and Elijah. So all that works out pretty good with it when we're talking about those things. There just as a side note to all that, there was one more time when the waters parted. It's when Joshua leads the children of Israel into the land, into the promised land, and Jordan's dammed up one more time. All right, but that's not where we're at now. We're in Exodus chapter 15. All right, we're out. We've made it through. They've had their first encampment. We talked about Succoth, right? And that's one of the feasts, and that's commemorating the first place that they encamped on the exodus out of Egypt. All right, now they're through the Red Sea. All 600 of the horsemen and the chariots are all dead. The bottom of the Red Sea are on the shoreline there in front of Israel. And of course, God has stood ground against, just like he said he would, against Egypt. Now, that pretty much destroys Egypt. The gods of Egypt are dead. Pharaoh's men are dead. They're out of Egypt. They're on their own now. All right. And so here we have it. Now, Moses sings a song here. All right? And this is what it says in verse 1 of chapter 15. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord, and he spake, saying, I will sing unto the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his riders hath he drowned in the sea. Okay, now here we're talking about, this gets labeled in my Bible as a song of Moses, but this one in yours, it was labeled as a song that Moses sang. And I agree with that. This is a song that Moses and the children sang. Because sometimes I have heard people get confused and think that this is the song of Moses here in chapter 15 just because it's Moses singing and he's celebrating. But it's not. Now, if you remember, it's the Song of Moses in chapter 15 of the book of Revelation. Remember, those that he's confused and he doesn't understand what he's saying. He says what he's looking at are the people that gained the victory over the beast and over the mark and over his image and all that stuff during the Great Tribulation period, right? And that those people that did that, sing the Song of Moses, right? Well, okay, that's Deuteronomy chapter 32. That's the actual song. And when you go over there and you read that, this is the song that Moses sang to the children of Israel, right? And this song is a prophecy. It goes on in stuff you probably heard me say, their rock is not our rock, and things like that. Well, that's right out of the Song of Moses. It's just talking about the Antichrist appearing. And it said, don't follow that rock. You're waiting for the big rock, and the little rock, you're following the small rock, the wrong rock. But that's that's part of what the Song of Moses actually entails. And it's a really good reading. You'd be able to understand it just because you can understand the book of Revelation pretty good now. Yeah. It really helps you along keeping that, to keep going straight with what Moses is actually talking about. But just remember, that is prophetic. It's not something that he was singing because of any other thing other than that. It's it's probably, this is the Song of Moses, and that was worked out that that's what they would be singing at the end. Right. The same thing that Moses was singing. Right. So I want to keep that straight, because that can cause people, because there are some people that have memorized the Song of Moses. It's possible, it's quite lengthy. But people who like theater, they memorize scripts all the time that are pages after pages after pages of dialogue, So it's no biggie, but it just takes a little bit to sit down and work on it. But if you're going to do that, make sure you got the right song. That's what I'm getting. Yeah. Don't come into chapter 15 and memorize the wrong chapter. That's all I'm saying. But nonetheless, let's go on and get back with chapter 15. Verse 2, and the Lord said, and this is the song, and the Lord is my strength and song. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him an habitation. My father's God, I will exalt him. Now, I would hate to try and put this to music. I don't know. This would be hard. I mean, I don't know enough about
sure
music
back
even
then
to tell.
it was more of a chant.
It may have been, right. I have not, and they were just real good. And the way it sounds in Hebrew is probably
Yeah.
not like it reads
Not
in English,
like it
right?
reads in English, that's right.
And that's also should be taken into consideration. But the words that it says are very important. And the Lord, and listen to this, Yahweh, that's the capital Lord. So that you're getting, this is the Most High God that it's referring to. Yahweh is a man of war. Now people all falling in love with this peace and fuzzy lovey Jesus stuff, all right? But remember right here, if you're on the wrong end of that, you don't have to necessarily be his enemy, but you will be corrected. He's the man of war. So people should remember that. And people get all mad at me when I start saying stuff like peace and fuzzy lovey Jesus. I don't identify with that too much really at all when it comes to the Bible, because I mean, these are some hard people who lived in a hard place in a hard time. I mean, so they're very pragmatic and they're very, very systematic about the way they approach and say things. And that's one of the reasons the Bible stays contiguous, one unit from cover to cover. That's all the way through the New Testament, is because of that. But nonetheless, verse 3, and the Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his hosts have he cast into the sea. His chosen captains also are drowned in the Red Sea. The depths are covered by them. They sink into the bottom as a stone. Every time I read this, it sounds like, it almost reminds me of Job in a lot of ways when you're reading some of Job.
Right.
Thy right hand, O Lord, has become glorious in power, and thy right hand, O Lord, hath dashed in pieces the enemy. Verse 7, and in the greatness of thine excellency thou hast overthrown them that rose up against thee. Thou hast settest forth thy wrath, which consumed them as stubble. Verse 8, and with a blast of thy nostrils the waters are gathered together, and the flood stood upright as a heap, and the depths were congealed in the heart of the sea. I mean, split the sea right down the middle. All right. Now, people, that's something I want to talk about too, since we just crossed the Red Sea. People often say this is an earthquake or something like that, but if you remember what it was the same thing that brought the locusts. It was the strong east wind.
Yeah, it was the wind.
Yeah, the wind was what divided it, and that brings in the spiritual element, because that word wind is ruach, and that's the same word that you get in Genesis chapter 1. Verse 1 and 2, or verse 2, where the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. That's the word that's used there, is ruach. All right, so that wind blowing isn't just a wind, but there's a spiritual component to the wind as well, is what I'm getting at. So, but it just doesn't hold with an earthquake, being an earthquake for the reason why the sea receded and then came back as a part of a tsunami. But it doesn't hold with the biblical account, really. I know a lot of people try to put that there when they start talking about the Red Sea, but that just doesn't quite fit, I don't think, from a biblical perspective anyway. Verse 9, the enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will drive the spoil. My lust shall be satisfied upon them. I will draw my sword, and my hand shall destroy them. Thou didst blow with thy wind, and the sea covered them that sank as lead in the mighty waters. Now, that's exactly what happened to them whenever they were, as Moses lifted his hand again, and the water collapses on top of them once more. Stated very well, very eloquently, right there as well. And I guess Moses was also a spokesman. He says he wasn't, but I think he's better than what he's leading on. Who is like unto thee, O Lord, among the gods, little g, and plural? Who is like thee, glorious in holiness, fearful in praise, and doing wonders? 12, thou stretchest out thy right hand, and the earth swallowed them. Thou in thy mercy hast led them forth, the people which thou hast redeemed. Thou hast guided them in thy strength unto thy holy habitation. And the people shall hear and be afraid. The people shall hear and be afraid. Sorrow shall take hold on the inhabitants of Philistina. These are the Palestinians of today is who it actually ends up it comes down to. That's so hard to say after saying Palestinian all your life. But think about that. The people that heard about this and saw these things, just like even with Elijah, I mean, you had, like he was saying, he had them pinned in.
Yeah.
He thought he was going to raise his hand and kill all of them because he had them in the gorges, stuck against the towers of Migdol, against the Lord, against the sea and the Lord of the North. He thought it was going to be a slaughter. All those people that were around that were going to watch that slaughter saw the exact opposite happen to them. Right. So all of them go back to their countries with a new idea about who the big guy is on the block and actually who Israel is, as they're on their way out the door. So I think that's really important to understand that people that saw this, that's word of mouth and it gets around. And then, as glorious as it was, how word of mouth gets. It goes from one mouth to another mouth to another mouth, and pretty soon you got apples instead of oranges. I mean,
and it gets crazy,
right. But nonetheless, it still worked pretty good. Like it stopped. Like in Elijah, when Elijah saw the thing with Elijah, the rage from Syria stopped.
It stopped.
Because of the people that they sent back to tell the story.
Right.
So often that's a good way to work peace into it, even in war even. But anyway, 15. Then the dukes of Edom. All right. Now these are you got to remember who Edom is. Edom is Esau's brother. Is Jacob's brother Esau. Jacob is the father for all 12 tribes, and Esau is his own nation unto his own. Who is it's mistranslated. It says he'll always live in the fatted land, but it's away from it. It's a negative. He should be away from the fatted land. That Esau would always live in a place where it's cold and hard to make a living, as tillers of the ground anyway, like Jacob's people were.
Right.
Even Esau is, but he lives in a land that's way hard. That's a lot harder to till the ground up where the Russians live. That's who they are today. Nonetheless, but these are so he's talking about the descendants of Esau, Jacob's brother, who went north. The mighty men of Moab, trembling, shall take hold upon them. All the inhabitants of Canaan shall melt away. And he's talking about the promised land, when they go into the promised land. Fear and dread shall fall upon them, and the greatness of thine arm thy shall be as still as a stone. And till thy people pass over, O Lord, till thy people pass over. And that's reference all the way back to the original Passover, right? All right? Which thou hast purchased. And we're going to find out how long it's been here in just a minute when we get done with this song. Thou shalt bring them in and plant them in the mountain of thine inheritance. In the place, O Lord, which thou hast made, thou shalt dwell in the sanctuary, O Lord, which thy hand has established. The Lord shall reign forever and ever. For the house of Pharaoh went in with his chariots and with his horsemen into the sea, and the Lord brought again the waters upon the waters of the sea upon them. But the children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea. And that's something that stays consistent. No matter who the water's parted for, when they walk across, it's not even muddy, it's dry. They just walk across just like it's a normal path. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's very consistent about it when God has something to do with it. But the children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea. Verse 20, and Miriam the prophetess. This is bringing a new character in, I believe. This is Moses and Aaron's sister. All right. Now, a lot of would-be preachers today have a hard time with women prophesying. They like to say that this was something that didn't happen, in the Old Testament or even in the New Testament, but they're just been kind of slow. Right here, what does it say? In the Bible, in the book of Exodus, in verse 20, Miriam the prophetess. All right, so the Bible declares that she is a female prophet.
Prophet.
All right, and she's a brother of Aaron, Moses and Aaron. All right, the sister of Aaron took a timbrel, which is like a tambourine, in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. Now, some of them also try to take this and try to say, she's with the women. She's only teaching the women. But God doesn't send a prophet or a prophetess to one sex.
No.
It's just not the way he works ever.
There's no sex.
There's no sex involved in it. Yeah. Right. It's just the message is what it is. All right. Verse 21, and Miriam answered them, sing ye to the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his riders hath he thrown into the sea. All right. So that finishes up the scene there with the song. Not the song of Moses, but just the song that Moses and the children sang to God for the things that they'd seen before them over the course of the last month or so, right? So Moses brought, and out here where bitter, the water's made sweet. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days into the wilderness and found no water. And when they came to Moriah, they could not drink of the waters of Moriah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name was called Moriah, which means bitter. All right? Verse 24, but the people murmured against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? And these people are just kind of, that's all they do is whine, it seems like. Think about all the things they have seen and see, and there's none. Yeah, right. And they can't even rely on faith. These things is faith. We rely on faith. These things we didn't see with our eyes.
They were
saw
blasted with it.
Right, in front of their face over and over and over, and yet they still complain.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand that, but that's just beside the fact. Right? Verse 25, and he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, all right, which when he cast it into the waters were made sweet. There he made them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them, and said, if thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God. And just people talk about law. This is another one of those spots where it just flat tells you, and it's repeated over and over and over in the Old Testament, and it takes about 2 minutes to find it at any one given place about the law. What's it always say about the law? Return to it, follow it, what applies, especially as Christians. Some things don't apply. What ordinances are one of them? Don't apply, no problem. But there's a lot of other stuff that does still apply. Right. But listen to what it says about this. Thou shalt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and will do that which was right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep his statutes. All right. I will put none other diseases upon thee. All right. So this is talking about plagues like in the last days too, right? Not just there, but this still applies to this day. All right, which I brought upon the Egyptians. And remember, he's bringing some of them back. We've studied that before out of the mirror. It's just a mirror, right? Egypt is a mirror for what's to come, right? So he's promising right here that if you're following my commandments, one of the number one commandments, have no other gods before me, right? All right, well, okay, so if they appear and they're following the wrong star, the wrong morning star, well, then they're breaking the primary commandment right off the bat, right? Among others, but that's right off the bat. All right, I'll put none of for I am the Lord. For I am the Lord that which I have brought upon the Egyptians. For I am the Lord that healeth thee. All right, 27. And they came to Elim, where there were 12 wells of water, and 70 palm trees, so 70 palm trees. And they encamped there by the waters. That's got to be a pretty place. All 12. It's one tribe. That's one well for each tribe, right? Yeah. And it's a full well for each tribe. Right. So sounds like a beautiful place. All palm trees. I mean, this had to have been a wonderful oasis. I couldn't imagine them being there completely isolated by themselves, even in that time. With this, because that would have been an oasis. Yeah. All right, let's go a little bit farther in chapter 16. All right, because I wanted to get into this, because I like this. And they took their journey from Elim, and the congregation of Israel, the children of Israel, came into the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. Now this is get you how long it's been. On the 15th day of the second month after they're departing out of the land of Egypt. So they're 30 days exactly after Passover. Yeah. I mean,
escalated quickly.
1 month.
Yeah.
Right. They went from the first Passover, to being free and whining to go home, back to Israel or to Egypt.
To Egypt,
Listen to what it says. The whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. Right? And the children of Israel said unto them, would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt. All right, so I wish God would have killed us there in Egypt. Yeah. All right, when we sat by the flesh pots, and where we did eat bread to our fill, for ye have brought us forth into the wilderness to kill us, kill this whole assembly with hunger. Wow, that's some that's clanking when you walk to make
Yeah.
that accusation
Yeah.
after everything that they've been through. That he brought them, that God brought them, not just that, but God brought them all out there just to kill them, just to let them starve to death.
Yeah.
All right, he's done with them. That wasn't anything you talk.
Coconuts, there's palm trees.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Listen to what it says. Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you. For Moses. Did he say for the children? He said, no. Moses has been the one that's been obedient.
Right.
He's clicked his heels and said, yes, sir, every
Right.
time he was supposed to.
Yep.
Right. And so he's doing it for Moses, right? Because they're busting Moses' hump about it anyway, right? Right. And the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or not. Oh, so that's another test. Just like it says in the book of Revelation, these things befall the last generation as a test. Did you pay attention?
Yeah.
All right. This gathering of the bread, this is a test for them. Are you going to pay attention to what I say? All right, and that's all it was. All right, this is all it is. And he even told Moses straight up. Verse 5. And I'd like to say that most of them did pretty good. We'll see. And it came to pass that on the 6th day, when they shall prepare that which they bring in, it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. So on the 6th day, you're saving for the Sabbath day the next day. So you gather twice as much the 6th day, no problem, good to go.
Yep.
All right. Verse 6, and Moses and Aaron said unto all the children of Israel at even, then ye shall know that the Lord hath brought you out of the land of Egypt. Verse 7, in the morning, then ye shall see the glory of the Lord. All right, now that's how that Shekinah glory, part of that iris and the whole firmament thing that we've talked actually quite a bit about, in the past. That's what that is, the glory of the Lord. So that just fills you in on a lot of things. He goes through your mind when you start thinking about that. All right. For that he heareth the murmurings against the Lord. All right. Does they, are they murmuring against Aaron and Moses? Yes, but they're really murmuring against God. That what are we that ye murmur against us? So he's just saying, Moses is just saying, it ain't nothing to murmur against me and my brother or my sister, but you're murmuring against God, the one that's brought you this far so far.
Right.
All right. So that's a whole different subject. All right. And Moses said, this shall be when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to fill, for that the Lord heareth your murmurings which you murmur against him. And what are we? For your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord. And Moses spake unto Aaron, saying to all the congregation of the children of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he hath heard your murmurings. Verse 10, and it came to pass, as Aaron spake unto the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the clouds, just like you said it would. And Moses spake, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, I have heard the murmuring of the children of Israel, speaking to them, saying, at evening you shall eat flesh, and in the morning ye shall be filled with bread, and ye shall know that I am the Lord your God. Verse 13, and it came to pass that at the evening that quails came up and covered the camp. That's the best of food. Right. And in the morning, this is what I like about this. And in the morning, the dew lay around as the host. And when the dew lay, that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as a hoarfrost on the ground. All right, the smaller thing, I don't know what it's called. All right, now hoarfrost. Let's see. You're talking about it's a reference to a cup actually. A hoarfrost. It's like a beer stein, so it's just a covering for the lid. So you're talking about something like that, just something about that big, just 3 inches maybe across, something like that. All right. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said to another, it is manna, for they wist not, or they knew not what it was. That's what manna kind of means, is what's that?
Yeah.
I don't know what it was.
Whoa.
All right. But it appears as the dew evaporates, the manna appears behind the dew as it evaporates. All right. And Moses said unto them, this is the bread which the Lord hath given you to eat. All right. Verse 16, this is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. Gather it, every man according to his eating, 1 omer every man. So a certain amount per person, right? According to the number of your persons. So if you have 10 people, you have 10 omers. All right? Take ye every man of them which are in his tents. Verse 17, the children of Israel, remember this is a test.
Yeah.
Right? The children of Israel did so and gathered some more, because they had more people, and some less because they didn't have as many. Verse 18, and when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack. All right? But the point was not to get greedy. Just what it was.
Provide.
All right? Right. And they gathered every man according to his eating. Verse 19, and Moses said, let no man leave of it till morning, all right? Eat it all. And let it go to the next day, all right? He's trying to teach them. What God's actually trying to teach them is, look, and this applies to people in the last days, specifically to us here in the last days. You don't have to worry.
Yeah.
As the meal comes, eat. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it tomorrow. I got it covered.
Right.
You're gonna be all right. It's all taken care of. And he's teaching them to trust in that.
Trust,
To trust. You don't have to be a glutton and save for a rainy day. You don't have the rainy day coming. Is what he's trying to let them know. All right. Verse 20. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses. Imagine that. They didn't listen. But some of them left off until the morning. Right? They didn't get up when they were supposed to and get their food. All right? And so the stuff that they saved, and it bred worms and stank. And Moses was wroth with them. Moses was ticked because he knew it was a test. And he didn't hedge his bet. He just told them this is what to do, and let the chips fall wherever they were. And that's a lot like teaching. That's a lot like teaching this. We talked a little bit about that today earlier, actually. And once I teach it, it's done. Once there's a video on it, it's out there. If you take it or leave it, I don't care. I'm done with it. Once it's out there, it's done. And besides, this way I don't have to go back over and teach it 100 times.
Exactly.
It gets real repetitive, and there's a lot more I'd rather do. It's not. I like what I'm doing it, but there's more I'd rather do.
We do other stuff,
But nonetheless, the people that cheated, they slept in, thought they were going to be a little bit lazy and sleep in, and when they get up to eat, what they had saved and squirreled away was just full of,
It's trash,
And that also applies like with the mark of the beast. It's like, you may have money saved away somewhere, but when he appears, don't covet that money because it means nothing anyway. It's getting ready, everything's changing anyway. But now you got a new age being born, so why bother with it? In reality, you always have to remember that, especially when things really start happening. It's like, land means nothing, property means nothing. The point is don't bear the mark of the beast. If you got to eat a mortgage, time's pretty short by then anyway, so don't worry about it. All right? I'll pay you in the next age.
Yeah, right.
I'll take it with me. All right? But nonetheless, if you don't understand what none of that was, well, you got some catching up to do there because you got to get back in the book of Genesis in the first two lectures of the book of Genesis. But nonetheless, just a little bit farther and we're done for tonight. Verse 21. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating, and when the sun waxed hot, it melted. All right, so if there was some left, after the dew left it, as soon as the sun hits it, it evaporates it behind it. All right, I don't know what this is. It's called, let's see, how far do we got left in that? We got a little ways. Where are we at? That's a good place to stop right there. Verse 21 is where we're on. We're on 16:22. But there's something I want you to understand about this. This is called angel's food, all right? I want to listen to what it says about it because this talks about only one place. Whoops, how do you spell angel, I guess? All right, I'm messing something up. I spell
A-N-G-E-L-E.
yeah. Well, why can't I find it? Okay, it's in Psalms. Anyway, Scott, he refers to it as angel's food. That's all I wanted you to say about this time. They called it angel's food, the hoarfrost that they were talking about eating. All right, but one of the ones to think about was, okay, this is called angel's bread then. Oh, that was angel's bread, not angel's food. And it'll sustain an angel. Okay, now that's interesting. That's from the first age, then. That's a spiritual body. So he sends the same food that sustains an angel to sustain Israel in the wilderness. And they'll go on to say, he'll go on to say it looks like coriander is white and it tastes like honey. And it's really good tasting. I mean, but the point is that it'll sustain both an angelic body and a flesh body at the same time. And then when I got to thinking about that, I was like, okay, well, back in the book of Genesis, with Abraham, well, the angel of the Lord eats with, there's two of them, they eat with him, and they have a meal prepared, and they eat the same thing. They eat meat, it's not just, they're not vegetarian, and anything like that. Whatever meal that they had, they ate with them a few times, and Lot and the angels, that's what they were doing in Sodom and Gomorrah, they were eating. The same thing. I was like, that's kind of an interesting thought. And that goes right in with the days of Noah then. All right? That shows you how kind of close the relationship between an angelic flesh, for lack of a better word, and flesh, people, is, how close it really is, because the same food that will sustain both of them, and they were able to sire a race of giants. Now, the giants had some defects, and we'll get into the defects, and this time we're going to really hit the giants really good. I've been seeing a lot of stuff online about giants, and you see, people tend to believe just about anything that somebody will say, but I see a lot of pictures of heads that are, human heads that are 9 feet across, which is just ridiculous. I mean, no. It gives you the size, the rough size of what they were. They were big, but they weren't. That's not that. No. Not that big. Now, a lot of places within Christianity will tell you this about giants, that there was always been giants among it. There's always been those people that were just, like my friend Danny used to come in here, the giant dude. He's just huge. But that doesn't fly for what Genesis was talking about with giants, So there's a lot of bad information out there. And it's hard for people, like, we live in that spiritual condition of Amos chapter 11 where people haven't heard it before. So when you do start talking about it, people get confused often. Anyway, that's it for tonight. You guys have a good night online, and we're going to bed because we got to open.
Yes, well, I don't open, but...
But